All right, folks. Hey, I am Professor Benjamin here to teach you this semester. And I want to teach you about a concept called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity has to do with how your brain changes as you learn things. And this is applicable to any course you're taking, and anything you're learning. If you're learning a language, if you're learning about biology, if you're learning about sports psychology or ecology or environmental science or English, whatever it is, neuroplasticity applies. First, let's do some basic anatomy. This is a neuron or a basic nerve cell, and your brain is made of these nerve cells. These nerve cells also travel down your spinal cord out to your muscles and things like that. But the neuron is the basic unit of learning because the neuron is what will change as you learn concepts. So let's look at the structure. The neuron has a cell body. You see the blue nucleus there. The dendrites, these are the branches that come off of the cell body. We have the axon, that's the longer part, almost like the cord that that's going to attach to another nerve cell. The axon is surrounded by myelin sheath, and different cells called Schwann cells, and this insulates that axon the same way sort of how plastic or rubber insulates an electric cord that you have to improve the efficiency of an electrical signal. So the electrical signal in a nerve cell travels down that axon, and it will travel to the axon terminal. So the dendrites up here, the dendrites on the cell body receive a signal from another neuron and create an electrical signal that then moves down the axon to the axon terminal. Now, that axon terminal will sync up with the dendrites of another cell like we see here. And they don't actually physically touch. They have this tiny, weeny, so small space called a synapse, okay? And when an electrical impulse travels from one neuron to the other and it gets to the synapse, okay, what happens is right there at the synapse, there are these, see the little blue balls? Those represent neurotransmitters, chemicals that are released. So the electrical signal travels down to the terminal axon, the ends of that at the synapse, and here we have these neurotransmitters. And on the other side, the dendrites of the other nerve cell that's going to connect with it, they have receptors. These are mostly made of proteins, and they are the right shape to fit specific neurotransmitters. And when an electrical signal comes down, it causes neurotransmitters to be released like this, and they go to the receptors. When the receptors receive those neurotransmitters, they trigger the receiving cell to create an electrical impulse. They change the permeability of the membrane, and different ions move around and create an electrical impulse, similar to the way a battery creates a charge. So what happens is then that sends an electrical signal down the rest of that nerve cell out to its dendrites. Now, the dendrites they don't connect to one single nerve cell. You saw the branching dendrites and the branching axon terminals. They connect to many different dendrites. So you could think of this as a neural net, right? So if you're learning something like right now, as I talk to you, you have some signals that are coming in from audio responses, different parts of your brains, visual responses coming in. If you're writing down any notes, then you have physical. So different parts of your brain are firing these signals, and they're connecting all together. That is basically learning. The more you use those neurons, visually, auditorially, physically writing, linking them to memories and ideas, the more that pathway will create more neurotransmitters and release a bigger neurotransmitter response across the synapse. Impulse travels down these different neurons, more receptors are created. So you get a stronger impulse. You have more receptors, more neurotransmitters, and it creates a bigger electrical impulse. That's essentially how memory and learning works. You create stronger, larger impulses as you use these neural pathways over and over again. Now, additionally, the brain actually changes, it grows as you use these neurons more and more. So here you see on the screen, I've got this normal neuron, after it's been stimulated, after it's been used a number of times, let's say it's reading words over again or listening to something over and over again, it will create more branching, more dendrites. Can you see how at the axon terminal and further up, there's more branches, and at the cell body, there's more dendrites there? With stimulus, cells grow. So in fact, your brain gets bigger, right? And it allows that neuron to attach to other neurons. And the more different areas of the brain you can attach together, the better you learn something. That's where different visual, auditory inputs, repetition, writing, coloring, drawing, all this will create different neurons being triggered to create this branching effect. So more neurons are involved. So you use the neurons over and over, you get a stronger impulse. Also, the more different areas, you start to branch the neurons out to make even stronger, larger, more diverse connections. Let's review this again. Neurons change as they're used. This is called neuroplasticity. So you can think of learning is actually neuroplasticity. We can have neurons grow, more branches. They don't grow new neurons, they just grow more branches and more connections as they're used. And we can also create more receptors and more neurotransmitters that will create a larger, stronger impulse, as you can see here, right? You have the initial state, you have, as you use the brain cells, then we create more transmitters and more receptors, which creates a stronger electrical impulse. And all of this will trigger better memory and better connections and recall of information. Essentially, learning equals physical changes in the brain, right? And I know a lot of people understand practice, like if you're shooting foul shots or you want to draw a flower, the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. And what's happening as you do those physical things, those practices, you're actually changing your brain too, and the connections to your fine motor skills and your larger motor skills. But it's true with learning. It's true with if you're learning a concept in biology or in business or whatever. The more you read, the more you understand it, the more your brain will change and be more likely to have stronger impulses and a bigger neural net that will essentially hold that memory. The more we use a neural pathway, the more we fire those cells in our brain, the more receptors and transmitters we make. Physical change in the brain. The more dendrite branching we make, which creates bigger connections and essentially grows the brain. Then we get stronger, more diverse, or more connected electrical impulses. All of this equals better memory and better patterns. Essentially, it's learning. That's the physical changes that take in your place in your brain as you learn. What does this mean for your education, for your learning? Well, the more practice you do, this will create stronger electrical impulses in your brain. The more you go over ideas, the quizzes you take, the notes you take, studying you do, the stronger the impulses will be in your brain. The stronger those impulses are in your brain, the better the memory will be, the better you'll learn the things. And especially if you, as you're studying and stuff, instead of just reading something over and over, if you're reading something that's giving you a certain visual input and triggering parts of your brain that are associated with language and memory and word recognition, but also if you write things down and take notes, that's triggering another set of neurons. So that creates more branching. And what if you even draw little figures or copy graphs and things that are in the textbook? That puts more images to it and will help you learn the things better and make bigger and broader connections. So basically, the more things you do, the better your brain learns because it changes more. It physically changes more. You basically make your brain bigger. You can make your brain bigger if you want. The more you do something that's related to a certain aspect of learning or whatever, the bigger your brain will be, you know? And we see this magnetic resonance studies that have images of people's brains. For example, there's a famous study of neuroplasticity looking at taxi drivers in London. And this is before we're using apps and GPS. The regions for spatial memory in taxi drivers' brains were bigger than the regions of a normal person's brain. even when they compared it to bus drivers, because the bus drivers drove a normal route, so their brain didn't have to learn new inputs and new connections. But the taxi drivers were always learning new routes and different ways to go, so their brains was being stimulated in more ways, creating more branches and basically making that area of the brain bigger, right? We see that with athletes, musicians, all kinds of things. So you can make your brain bigger if you study and you put the time in and you use different modes of learning. It's just like practicing a physical sport. And if you're practicing a physical sport, that's also how you learn that skill. So that is neuroplasticity. That is what neuroplasticity means for your learning. If you keep that concept in as the semester goes, I think you will do better. See you later. Bye.